Joe, firstly, let's take you back to the start of your footballing career. What did your early years in the game look like?
My early years in the game looked like playing for a Sunday League team from when I was about 6 or 7, I think. Played in a really strong team, won everything we played in, and as a result there were a lot of scouts coming around watching us, which led to me at the age of 8, I signed for Chelsea, which was my boyhood team as well, so it was a special moment for me, and then went through the academy system from 8 until 16. And was released at 16 and then left Chelsea and joined Wimbledon. Back then Wimbledon were in the lower divisions, lower than they are now. And that's when, from age 17, so just before I turned 18, it's when I got invited back to Chelsea to help with some coaching. And that was when I first started coaching alongside playing at the same time at the age of, that would have been just before I was 18.
What was it like for you when you got released?
Yeah, when I got released, it was a really difficult period. It's what you know as a Chelsea fan as well, but it's also just your routine. All my mates that I played with all through my childhood. It's a difficult period to go through, and I think that when I then fast forward went on to coach at academy level myself and coached boys around that age, I think it was something I was sort of very mindful of, the level of support needed and how important it is to boys of that age. And exactly what I've said there, how important support is. I got that. I can never complain about that. Firstly, my family were incredible. I wasn't one of these kids that has extra pressure internally at home, so I was lucky in that sense. But the staff I had around me at Chelsea as a player, particularly Neil Bath, he was a coach at the time for me in several different age groups, went on to be the academy manager. Neil was brilliant for looking after us when we were Chelsea players, but then beyond that, when we'd left, still keeping in touch. And it was actually Neil that advised me to go and do a course at a college that had coaching, the level 1 coaching course as part of it. So I would never have just thought to do coaching on my own. He advised me to do that, and then it was Neil that arranged for me to come back and help coaching in the academy at Chelsea. So yeah, it was a tough time, but the support I got through it, sort of one door closed and another opened at that club as well.
Was it a difficult decision to make, stopping your playing career?
Yeah, it was really difficult to make, and if I'm honest, it was one that I properly made when I can't even remember. I was probably 19 or 20. I was in a position where I'd now been brought back in at Chelsea, and I'd actually been made full time because it was the start of the Roman Abramovich era, where the scale of the club from when I was there, and I mean even the amount of staff that there were in the academy, it was just never big enough to take it to where Roman and the people driving the club forward wanted to take it. So first and foremost, they needed to expand. So Neil brought me in. As I said, aged 19, 20, I'm now in every day at Chelsea, coaching the young kids and then playing in the evenings and playing at weekends. But then it started, these situations kept cropping up where I had a game to play in the evening myself, but I was also getting offered the opportunity to come and help take a session. And it was coaches the likes of Brendan Rodgers and Paul Clement that at that time were they would have been in their 30s, really sort of, the commitment and the desire they showed to be upskilling themselves and dedicating their sort of passion to their craft of coaching. It started rubbing off on me, and I found myself, first of all, knocking back sessions at Chelsea because I was going to play in games myself at night, and then I found myself coming home thinking, I'm coming home from these games that I'm playing in and I've not really enjoyed it, and then I'm at Chelsea as part of this new coaching setup and I'm loving it. So it quite quickly became an easy decision to make in terms of what could be a career for me. Obviously in my head as a young lad, always there would be things, I'd miss playing and should I get back to it and give it another go. But what I could see, what was so clear at that time at Chelsea, again, it was the early years of the Abramovich era. What was so clear was that the investment was obviously heavy in terms of finance, but it wasn't just the financial investment, it was how sort of determined and driven everyone around the club was that this club needs to aim to be one of the best in Europe. And what that also means is we're going to put people in positions, give people these roles and jobs, but once they're in them, we're going to do everything we can to develop them and upskill them. And what was so clear to me, it was almost like if coaching is something that I'm into, which I was, this is almost the equivalent of being at like the best university in the world for a young coach that wants to learn, with brilliant coaches around you, brilliant young players to work with. I made that decision age 19, 20, and from there just gave absolutely everything to making the most of studying and taking in everything that was around me every day.
What age group did you come in at Chelsea, and was it a case of you going up the years as you went on?
Yeah, so I first started helping with probably under sevens, which quickly led to me becoming the under 8 coach when I was 18. I think that was 18, 19, and in that group there was people like Tammy Abraham, Dominic Solanke, Fikayo Tomori, Mason Mount and Declan Rice just below that. So even then, at that age, I'm working with these 8-year-olds thinking that these are not normal 8-year-olds. This is a high level. And then, yeah, pretty much if you look at it like a pyramid. So I worked with the under 8s, under 10s, under 14s, under 15s, all the way up to a big chunk then. In my last sort of period of time in the academy was with the under 18s and under 23s. But yeah, pretty much coached through every age group.
And you had the success with the 18s, wasn't it? The back-to-back FA Youth Cups. Was that one of your prouder moments in the academy days?
Yeah, it was a special period. It became a bit of a, as I said, we were making big strides in so many areas in the academy, and the FA Youth Cups, a big tradition in our country. At youth football, there's no real competitive competitions for the academy boys. Well, there wasn't back then until the FA Youth Cup. So it almost became recognised as what everyone looks forward to, but also the marker of where you're at as an academy. And we hadn't done well in it for a long period. And then including when we first started really kicking on with the level of players we had, there were a couple of cup upsets that we were on the wrong end of. So it became a bit of a mission for everyone that we want to win that, to sort of as one of the final pieces to show our progress as an academy. And yeah, we won it for the first time in 2010, which kind of got the ball rolling. And then, I was a younger coach looking up at this, and the nights we had at Stamford Bridge, again, it became something that you kind of aspired to, and a standard was being set. So it was nice for me that when I got the opportunity to be the head coach of the under 18s with some outstanding players, that we carried on doing it. Brad Collins and Jada Silva in those teams, people like Fankati Dabo, so boys that the Coventry, the people at the club and the fans would know were part of that as well. And it was an incredible period, and it doesn't surprise you when you see now how many of those boys have gone on to have really good careers.
So when did you come across Frank on your journey first?
I can't remember the exact timing or period where I got to know Frank, but obviously, as I said, when I first came in and started coaching, I was around it in the first season that Mourinho came to Chelsea in 2004. I was almost given the access that I was allowed to go out and watch the first team train every day right from pre-season, which obviously I took. It was watching Mourinho coach at that time. It was incredible. So I was out there a lot. So Frank was fairly early in his Chelsea playing career then. So I was around Frank on a day-to-day basis, watching him on his journey of going from strength to strength and becoming what he did. I was around Frank for a number of years. And then, yeah, you get to say hello to people around the training ground that you see, and he was always good like that. I also remember, I think when I was the under 14 coach, which probably would have been in about 2007, something like that. I remember we would play on a Sunday morning over the other side of the training ground, and on a Sunday, the day after the first team had a game, they would do their session or recovery, and Frank would often then go and run laps of the whole training ground on his own. And we'd be playing games, and he'd often stop, and sometimes I remember he would stop and do stretching right next to our dugout, and he's there, and I would kind of say to him, what do you think, Frank, anything? And sometimes he'd say stuff to me, and a couple of times I said, well, do you mind telling the boys then? So I remember, even as long as that's probably about 18 years ago now, that we're talking, I think so. I think my maths is right there. That I would have been coaching young players, and a couple of times Frank stepped in and spoke with them, which I really appreciated. And we'd just chit chat now and then. And then there was a moment. I'm not sure what year it was, but there was a moment where a core of the group in the first team didn't travel to an away game somewhere. Frank, Drogba and a couple of others. And I was like the most senior coach left that wasn't on the trip, if you like, at the training ground. So I was asked to take the group. So I took Frank in a session where he was a player and I was the coach leading the session. That was probably, I would have only been in my mid-20s there. So that was a big moment for me. A lot of preparation put into that session. And I know after Frank gave some feedback, not directly to me, but said to people that he enjoyed the session. And from there, I think we would just talk now and then closer to the end of Frank's playing career, we'd talk more about coaching. And then the minute Frank retired and he'd made the decision and made it clear that coaching was something he wanted to go into, it was always something that I wanted to be part of, because knowing him as a guy and watching watching the way he went about his work as a player and how he got to those levels, which not a lot of people got to see. You know, I know people would have heard the stories, and I know people saw what he did, but not many people got to see what those of us at Cobham every day saw, and the sort of the drive and the relentless nature that he had to keep improving. And the minute he sort of told a few people that he was going to go into coaching, I knew that when he goes into it, this is going to be something that he doesn't stop until he gets to the absolute top, because that's his approach to being a professional footballer, and then now a professional football manager. That is his approach, and I knew that that's the kind of person that I'd want to learn from and would want to sort of have those standards to meet.
And then you become part of his coaching journey when you become assistant manager at Chelsea in 2019. How was that, and what did those conversations look like?
Yeah, that was a special moment for me. It was funny because Frank obviously went to Derby the year before that, and in the lead into him joining Derby, we'd had conversations about me going there with him, which again, like I just said, I was keen to do that because I wanted to. I'd been working in the academy for a long time and been fortunate to be part of a lot of success, but obviously all at youth level. And my experiences in the academy, whether it was 14s, 15s, 16s, 18s, 23s, that was all with me as the head coach, which was great for my experience, because it's you making the decision, you doing the team talks and all that kind of stuff in those big competitions that we had. But I knew at some point I wanted to take the step into working into the senior game, and I knew that my route would probably have to be on someone else's coaching team. So the idea of that being with someone like Frank and a place like Derby in the Championship, I was interested in that. We weren't able to pull it off, but then fast forward about 9 months towards the end of that season, and it had gone well for them. We started talking about it again, and my head was kind of thinking the potential of joining him at Derby again, when he told me hold fire that he'd been in contact with Chelsea and that he might be coming back. And when that became official, you know, for me to get my first opportunity in senior football and senior coaching at Chelsea, at my club, at that level, I was incredibly proud. I was grateful for Frank to be the one to give me that opportunity, and it was nice as well, because I knew what a big opportunity it was for Frank, how special it was for him because of what Chelsea meant to him, but also knew that it was a big test. So I was excited to be part of that small team of people getting to help him try and drive this on. So it was incredibly exciting, but also it was a big step for me. You know, I was younger than some of the players. I think I would have been 32 at the time, and I went from being sort of in the top end of the academy to now it's that realisation of when you're going to stand up and address the group to take your first team meeting, and there's World Cup winners and Champions League winners in the room, and that was a big test. But I think that's if you're going to develop and push on, particularly in this game, that's the kind of the test you need.
And then obviously in the first season there's a transfer embargo, which means some of the academy players that have come through the ranks get the opportunity. How special was it for you that you were part of their journey from the start to then now playing the first team week in, week out?
Yeah, it was amazing, and I'm so grateful for that. And it's not lost on me the fact that not many people will ever get to experience that, I don't think, because I look at the people that are at the club now and what might go before. I think it's quite rare for a group of staff. It wasn't just me, there was other people around it that would have been there in the early days of 04, 05, 06, when the Mason Mounts and Tammy Abrahams were sort of 7 and 8, 9 years old. There was a small group of us, but for me to be there with them at that age, and then in dressing rooms in the FA Youth Cup and the UEFA Youth League, to then go and see it at the pinnacle of where we were all working towards. I remember having a moment where I think it was our first away win, so it was fairly early in the season. We hadn't won away, but then we went to Wolves and we won 5-2, so it was important for us to get our first away win. But we won 5-2, and Tammy Abraham scored a hat-trick, Mason Mount scored one, and Fikayo Tomori scored one. So what was kind of a okay start to the season, the one where we felt like we'd really got up and running, it was 5 goals from the academy boys alone, and I just remember seeing those 3 walk off the pitch with the Chelsea fans singing, and it meant so much more than just 3 points on the road with our team and on to the next, because it was just like, wow, how special is this? We have all been working for this for so long, put so much into it, And I have to be honest, there was years where the successful era of him and John Terry and Drogba and Ashley Cole and Peter Cech, they were so strong that it was so hard to get young players into it. You did have moments where you'd think, is this ever going to be possible? You know, our academy, we could see it growing and growing, and we knew how good the players were at 17, 18 because of all the Youth Cup success and all this kind of stuff. But the level of the first team was that high, and there were periods where we were getting no one near it. So all of a sudden, to live through a period of having those thoughts, to then watch at times under Frank in that first season, there's like 4 or 5 of the outfield players from the academy. You're going, we're forming half the team here, the academy boys, and making a contribution like that, it was special.
Fast forward a few years, you worked with Frank at Everton before going on to take the Millwall job. What did you get from that experience?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, when you work at Chelsea, there was a lot of success and a lot of winning. So the sort of the standard you're aiming for in your head, the mentality around the building is always with the aim, and as I said, the standard of winning. When we went to Everton, it was a big football club in a really difficult moment. So that was my first taste of, I felt there as the assistant manager, it felt like first and foremost the biggest part of the job was just trying to help breathe some life and confidence and belief into everyone around it, not just the players. I think we did a good job of that. We obviously stayed up at the end of what was a real difficult season. That was my first taste of really having to just sort of get together, get the spirit right, dig in and just dig out whatever result you could, where I hadn't been used to that at Chelsea. So that was a good experience at Everton, and that time obviously came to an end. And then, yeah, we were all out of work for a period, and I'd had conversations with people about becoming a head coach, because as I said, that had been what I'd been used to for most of my coaching life, was being the head coach. But it wasn't a case of I hadn't actively said, right, that's it, I'm done being an assistant now, I'm not going to work with Frank anymore. The situation just came up where Millwall approached me, asked me if I wanted to be in the process. I entered it and obviously got the job. And looking back at that, it was a valuable experience for me, because you learn from every experience, but you learn from it. It definitely toughens you up and gives you thick skin as well. And then another period out of the game, and Frank contacts me, and Frank had a lot of opportunities come his way, and we had a lot of conversations about different things. But when this one to come to Coventry and join him came up, you hear a lot of managers talk about things needing to be aligned and projects needing to look exciting, and you have an opportunity, at least a chance to take it where you want to take it and for it to look how you want it to look. And we looked at this club and definitely felt that. So I was delighted to join him again here.
What were your initial thoughts then when you first came in and how the season was going and what you wanted to do?
I think the most important thing was there's so much that goes on around coaching and management, but nothing will ever be more important in football than players. So what does the squad look like is always the first question you ask. And I'd had knowledge of the squad here because it was only the previous season that I was at Millwall. And in my time at Millwall, we did face Coventry twice. So as part of that process, I'd obviously done the opposition analysis, studied the team, prepared to play against Coventry, and then faced them twice, one away from home and one at the CBS. So I knew the team. So when Frank and I had conversations about other clubs where we sort of both have to get the laptops out and do a bit of digging, this one I didn't really have to be honest, because I knew the strength of it. And straight away when Frank asked me what my thoughts were, I said to him, well, if you're talking about the top end of the table being the target here, and then if you're asking me, are there many clubs in the championship with better squads than Coventry, in my opinion the answer is no. So first and foremost, have we got a chance of doing what we would want to do with these players? Absolutely yes.
Obviously the season doesn't end how people have liked it, but how much did you enjoy that season and getting back on the training pitch after a period out of the game?
Yeah, I loved it, and again I'll repeat that the most important thing in any football club is the players. And my role here is very much, it's a coaching role, so it's very close to the players, whether that be inside and having conversations and going through video and doing meetings with them, or the stuff on the training pitch. And we've got a brilliant bunch here to work with, great lads. There's a great sort of spirit between staff and players, which I love. That's a big part of how I work. I think I've got some great relationships with these boys already, but there's a real willingness to learn, and I can barely remember a session where I've come away feeling frustrated with the application of the group. So the day-to-day, first and foremost, like you said, before we even reflect on any of the journey of taking a team that wasn't doing that well to finishing quite strong, before you even reflect on that, just the the day-to-day enjoyment of the work is the standout memory of last season. But then, of course, football is about winning, and we got to a point where, in that period from just after Christmas to the end of the season, we won a lot of games. So that was really enjoyable.
And as we come to the end of our trip here in Portugal, what does the week look like, and how have the lads got on?
It's been good. It's obviously fairly early on, so it's still primarily about the conditioning side of it and getting fit, getting intensity levels up so that we're ready to go and hit the ground running, not kind of just sort of ease our way into the season and then have a slow start and have to claw points back. We want to really come out the trap, so intensity is key to that, and getting that right from the early stages is important. I think focus is a big word as well. I think because of how the season ended, I think there's probably quite a nice balance of a bit of excitement, because I think we got to a point, we could all see that the fans, I hope, would see. I think we got to a point in that probably the final quarter of the season, final third of the season, where we found our way of playing. We became a team that you could quite consistently see what we wanted to look like, and it was fairly successful for us. So I think there's probably a bit of excitement that we want to get back to that and try and pick up where we left off, so to speak. But we all know that it didn't end exactly how we wanted it to, so there has to be a focus that we can't just say, oh, when we started working together we were 17th and we got to 5th, great, let's just go again. It's not that simple in football. There's a fine line between confidence and complacency, and Frank is the first person that will always remind you of that. I think we all probably lived a similar journey, even after the playoffs. It's interesting, after the Sunderland games, because of how those two games actually went, I think we all know we dominated both the games. You then have the summer period of, once people give you their commiserations, they also tell you how well you did. And I think we're the same. I know me, Frank and Chris have always been like this. Sometimes you get too much praise, it almost makes you a bit paranoid that you have to remind everyone it's not that easy. So there's an absolute determined mentality of we have to go again every day in everything we do, that we know how good we can be, we know what it needs to look like and what we want to be about, but it takes work every day, and it has to kick on levels from where it was last season, because for sure all of our competitors, the teams around us in the league, the teams that did have disappointing seasons last year and fell below us, they're going to be even more determined. So we need to be ready for that. So I think everyone's looking forward to it, but there's a focus, and for that reason we're pushing every day.
Alright guys, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and don't forget also to press the bell icon to keep up to date with the latest videos.
Hey,
Boom!
Brandon, what's the colour of the sky?
It's a sky blue up in there.
It's a sky blue.
And we love it.